You know, it's good to have doctrine, but then there's real world. And like I said, I ran that thing like it was an M4. And I was a big, hefty boy. It wasn't a problem for me. This is on everybody's list. They're hard to get. They're very expensive. I use this for out to 100, 150 meters. Or for, like, say you're engaging targets in like a street battle, and then somebody up on a rooftop starts shooting at you. But what you do is you put that offset red dot on them, and then you switch that over.
All right, so we got the M249 SAW, PIP, which stands for Product Improvement Program. They want to get the most bang for their buck. They keep the same basic model, but then they add modifications to it, right?
So we got some of this stuff when I first started. We had airborne stocks, which I don't like. I actually really like the stock standard long stock, but I'm a big boy, BOI. So like, I was a SAW gunner for my first year and a half in the military. My first combat tour was a SAW gunner and 240 gunner, and I would run it like an M4. But if you look at this, it's got those side rails. It actually has a bottom rail. And some guys would just take the bipods straight off. Depending upon the mission, sometimes I wouldn't bring bipods along. Sometimes I would just keep them forward. That's normally what I did. They'd just be rocked forward. This looks like this might have a shorter barrel on it too. But this is pretty similar to the setup that I had. Later they got, which I think Cameron ran this, they had like M4 style adjustable butt stocks. I do like those a lot. The airborne stocks kind of twist and go in, and that's more for jumping. Some guys would use them, going into rooms and stuff. I didn't like that. I would just throw that right up on my shoulder if I had to cut corners or enter rooms, and then pop it back down again.
This machine gun I ran with quite a bit through training and stuff like that, and then we had them available to us, but I never had much occasion to use them for the mission set that I had.
Yeah, so for, we were running, for my first tour, running standard combat presence patrols, ambushes, LPOPs, and a lot of raids. Doctrinally, you're not supposed to have your SAW gunner run into rooms, but I mean, anybody that's run infantry missions, especially in the global war on terror, and, it's good to have doctrine, but then there's real world. And like I said, I ran that thing like it was an M4. And I was a big, hefty boy. It wasn't a problem for me. I was really good at being number one or number two man into the room. I lived for that stuff. That's just the way we ran it, and it was totally fine. I like having that extra firepower. For a while when we were in, 5.56 was considered kind of like, is this a weak round or isn't it? Or it's a very effective round, but I do like the fact that I would shoot 5 to 6 of them, or 3 to 4, depending upon what burst you were running through. I would carry when I first got there. I was running those Ripple Sole boots because they're so comfortable. Ripple Sole boots with 1,400 rounds of SAW ammunition, and you just get used to all of it. I fell over a lot. I would usually run about between 1,200 rounds to 800, 850. If we were doing raids, I'd do 850 rounds. If we were just doing presence patrols or whatever, I have about 12 to 1,400 rounds on me. I think it's a great weapon system. I really do. You can really reach out and touch someone with it. It's easy to control. You can stand and full auto fire that thing. You can run it. If you do your push-ups, you can run it just like a normal rifle, doing missions.
All right, the C9A2 light machine gun. I think this is Canadian.
Well, this is the same thing. It's literally the same thing. The only difference, if you see this, it doesn't have a top handguard, but it is literally an FN Mini-Me. It's just, I believe it's Canadian. The Canadian government's like, hey, we want this, this, and this, and the U.S. government's like, we want this, that.
Yeah, it's a lot of variations on a theme.
No, and not really. There's not very many variations. It's basically a SAW. It's the same thing. It's just the M249. And if you look right there, they've got a 200-round drum. If you guys want to know a little more about it, we've talked about it in the past, but I generally ran a couple 200-round drums, and I ran what we call nut sacks. They were basically like cloth, and there were two different kinds. I never had the round kind. I always had just the square kind, and they would hold about 100 rounds, and they were just easier to pack away into your ammo pouches or whatnot. Took a little bulk off the gun when you were running it, and also for noise, there was a lot less noisy because when you're running around with that big plastic drum. Well, I suppose another advantage too is if you fall, you could break the plastic. It's pretty durable, but if you land all your weight on that plastic drum, you could snap it off. That's kind of a pain in the ass. Nylon nut sacks didn't have that. It's got that machine gun optic. Canadians use those a lot. We had some of those. I tried one for a little while when I was in. I didn't like it myself. I've seen people mount those on their own.
Dude, what are these guys doing? What is going on here?
We had a guy that, our first training mission, you're using miles gear and blanks and stuff, and they made him the SAW gunner. We're all like, why is he the SAW gunner? He wasn't in my squad. We ran into one of those Connex boxes to clear, and so they had, their fire teams going, clear, everybody's clear, cool. And then this dude runs in, and we love him. He's a great guy, just maybe not be a SAW gunner, maybe drive. And he runs in, just goes, just unloads a full 100-round nutsack on all of his team members, then yells, clear! It was in training, awesome. But they're all like, okay, you're not the SAW gunner anymore. You're going to die.
Getting some distance on this on that one.
Yeah, you can reach out, 5.56, depending upon the length of the barrel. You can be lethal out to 800 meters. You know what I mean? You need barrel length. I believe the military's trying out a new round that works pretty well out of shorter barrels, but it's hard to get right now.
Are you trying about the 6.8?
Oh no, it's a 5.56 rounds. It's just designed differently. So when this round was first developed, the M16 had 20-inch barrels, so it needed that long for the powder burn. One of the many reasons 300 Blackout has gotten real popular is it works well at short barrels. It's great to have a shorter barrel, especially if you're doing room cleaning, but you can room clear with the full M16. Is a nice little SBR, easier to, for sure. You ever use one of these machine gun optics? I didn't like them.
Most of the stuff I worked with, it was in a training scenario, so it was just kind of handling and feeling it and lugging it around and stuff like that. I very well could have had time on the range with one of these things. I remember talking the guns back and forth and things like that, but once we got out to Iraq and do my thing, there was no reason for it for a lot of stuff that we did. SVDM.
This is a gun. This is on almost every gun collector, distance shooter, tactical, and I mean that in the good way, not the lame way. This is on everybody's list. They're hard to get. They're very expensive just due to scarcity. The SDV is a great rushing gun. It doesn't have the same internals as an AK. The internals are a little different. It is more accurate. What's interesting about Soviet and Eastern Bloc, the way they run their snipers is more like designated marksman. Yes, they have their cool snipers that poop in the bag, just like Western snipers. A lot of people don't realize you got to poop in the bag. Buddy's got to help you with it. Fodder. Did you do a sniper school? Oh, I helped my buddy poop in a bag. What does that? I didn't do that, but if I would have gone to sniper school, I gladly would have done that. Especially if it was you that I went with, Izzy. Would have loved that.
I would have been proud to have put in the bag next to you, Paul.
What's really cool is how they use their snipers more as designated marksmen. And a designated marksman, for those that don't know, we've talked about in other episodes, but it's more like a more accurate rifleman, more specific rifleman. You have your standard rifleman, and they should be accurate and awesome. But generally, you give your DMR a more accurized version of a fighting rifle that you can still clear rooms with, you can still fight with, and get into normal firefights. You can also reach out just a little bit further, be a little more accurate with your shot placement. DMR is valuable to every squad. Militaries do things differently. Like Eastern Bloc militaries don't have the same command and control structure, and we're currently seeing some of the maybe negatives of that with current affairs going on right now. The Western military command and control is awesome, and leadership, even though I think all leadership could improve and whatever, the ability for NCOs and junior leaders to make decisions and snap decisions and go for it, to take initiative. That's the big thing, to be able to take initiative. That's one of the things that really gives Western militaries a lot of capabilities. What the Eastern Blocs did was with their DMR, Western military started to adopt some of that technique of just having a more accurized rifleman, that's still in the fight, but able to take much more accurate shots. This is a gun. They're very expensive, like I said, because of import rules. We have really stupid import rules in the United States. A lot of guns you got to cut apart, weld back together, or you got to get special permits, and it's just a pain in the I've got a bunch of pistols I collect, specifically Spanish. They got to do crappy new engraving on them and stuff, and it's frustrating.
The PKP Pecheneg.
Okay, you had any experience with this bad boy? So this is a gun. If you watch what they're doing when they load this up, this is kind of like our 240 Bravo, but I would say closer to, not in function, but in practicality or in application, like an M60, because it's like a chopped 60, because it's a lot lighter. But if you look at where the round is loaded from, and it's coming out from the left, and also that's not disintegrating belt either. It stays the same. Yeah. So our 240s and our saws, the links fall apart as they're coming out, right? This doesn't.
I love seeing the that Warsaw rail kind of. They have got an attachment that kind of flips the side away, and you can flip it back up. That's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
There's three basic optic setups on your standard modern sporting rifle, specifically AR-15, and one of them is just a standard one power, either a red dot, or if you have astigmatism, a one power prism, or a holographic sight, and you have that magnifier. And when that first came out, I was a little how reliable is that? It's pretty reliable. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's kind of like how on an AK, normally you mount it above the dust cover. It's that side. People are gonna roast me in the comments because I forget exactly what it's called, but it mounts onto the side. The system, it's also open bolt, so open bolt needs a bunch of different things, but one of the advantages of an open bolt, especially when it comes to a belt-fed machine gun, is you don't have cook-offs. In a closed bolt, it holds more heat. So there's the potential that you just got into a firefight and you get into a stack and you're ready to go in, and you have a round cook-off and you shoot your buddy in the ass. That's never cool. It's generally a good thing to go with machine guns.
Usually, I'm guessing this is your setup at a point somewhere. That's so you're not running around this thing too much.
Oh yeah, well I mean you could, but it's heavy. The 7.62 by 5.4 round So like that 7.62 by 5.4 round too, that's a very capable round. That shoots out further than 7.62 NATO. You know, our standard like Bravo 240 round. So this will go a little further and hit a little harder. Very reliable weapon system.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen it before today. It's not looking familiar. That's pretty cool. I like being exposed to all the new guns. You know, you can tell they do their research out in squad land and really pull in weapons from around the world from different ages.
They're doing a great job for sure. That's a very usable reticle in there. So for those that don't know, you have all those dashes on the side and up and down for basically your range and then for your lead. So if you have like a moving target, you can lead them and you can gauge based on how far out you think they are and how fast they're going. And also one of the things those chevrons are used for is it's often your average man-sized target. You can tell how far away that is if it takes up their whole body or for shoulder to shoulder to head. And so that's just a quick thing, and especially with the belt-fed weapon system, you know, you can guesstimate and then walk it in.
All right, we got the L129A1 sharpshooter.
I have an AR-10 here. This is basically very accurized and durable mil-spec AR-10. This is actually a hidden gem. Not a lot of people know about these. So I'm a big Smith & Wesson fan, especially of their new M&P 2.0 pistols. I carry one almost every day. I teach with it. I was doing, you know, security work with one. Now their rifles are still pretty good, but most of the M&Ps are like law enforcement grade, or it's like mid-tier. I wouldn't go much lower than that for a fighting gun, but their AR-10s on the other hand. So if you look at this, you see this big chunky magazine in here, right?
Yeah.
You see the difference between these two, right? Like clearly there's a difference in size. Well, this is 7.62 NATO, and this is 5.56. Generally, you have like 20 round mags. You can run some 30, but you're getting pretty big. So yeah, basically this is not the same rifle as that, but it basically is. It's the same function. What they did with it is they just made it more accurate. They changed out a couple things here or there, and then for the military purposes, they basically made more parts compatible with the M16 M4. It's a very accurate gun, and what I love about AR-10s, like a lot of guys like M14s, I like Setnies, I like old school like G3s and stuff. A lot of people love FALs. They're very reliable guns, but they're kind of like, for ergonomics, they're a little older. You know, ergonomics have improved greatly, and it's hard to beat the functionality. Like, look at this thing. It's got ambidextrous controls. Like, that's crazy. Stock ambidextrous controls. This is a really reasonably priced gun. Like, I'm definitely picking up an M&P10 at some point. It's a great DMR rifle. It's a good deer gun. It's a good big game gun, but it's also, you can fight with it. You can clear rooms with this. You can still use it just like an M4 or an M16. You don't quite have the same capacity for ammunition because 7.62 NATO is a lot heavier. You can do everything that an M4 or an M16 can do and more. It kind of looks like an Elcan on there. It's just a very durable optic that you can change and zoom in a little bit on. I like them. They're kind of heavy, but they're tanks. Kind of hard to tell sometimes, like from our angle looking at it. But yeah, that'd be an appropriate optic for something like this.
So this is a run and gun and a DMR.
So you can fire with it, you can clear rooms with it. It's going to be a little heavier than your standard M4. And it's definitely, more suited for reaching a little further out than your standard M4. But yeah, you can do everything. It's a good everything gun. Like, our DMR, when I was in, we had a accurized M14. That had something called a scout scope on it. You can run different types of optics on them, but like a scout scope sits a lot further. It has like a really good eye relief, so you can be further away. But like you can run a bunch of different optics on because it's an AR platform. It's so modular. This is made by Knight's Armament Company. We call it CAC. I'd be super cool with running anything from Knight's Armament Company to save my life. They're a very high end, very well respected firearms manufacturer. Do a lot of government work.
So we got the RPK-74 light machine gun, right?
RPK-74. RPKs are kind of like big AKs, so you should like them. So I know you're getting more into the AK. An M249, which we already talked about, is a squad automatic weapon. Not all squad automatic weapons, or SAWs, are M249s. A squad automatic weapon just refers to, I don't want to say light machine gun, because a Bravo 240 is a light machine gun, but it's basically a more capable suppressive fire weapon system. Our M249s shoot the same bullet as our rifles, right? Your standard RPK shot 7.62 by 3.9, which is the famous Russian AK and SKS round. The RPK-74 shoots the same round as the AK-74. Eastern Bloc countries modernized their rifles, and they shoot something now similar to what we shoot out of our M4s and M16s. It's like the Eastern Bloc version of the 5.56. 5.54 by 3.9. if you ever shoot an AK-74, they're very soft shooting. Even though they got that big, piston bolt assembly moving back and forth, they're really soft shooting. That whole big gun absorbs it. They're so much fun. And actually, dude, I know you're looking to get into AKs. For a while in the U.S., for as far as like fighting rifle ammunition, that 5.54 was some of the best bang for your buck, cheapest ammunition you could get. You could do a lot worse than getting an AK-74. This is a squad automatic weapon. As we said, it's going to have a much longer, heavier barrel. They decided instead of going with belt fed, they went with magazines. So they have like big banana mags, like 40-round mags. They'll do drums. The drums can be a pain in the ass, but they can be pretty reliable if they're maintained. There's like a spring you turn so you can get them all in there. Most of them you're not going to get in if you do it on your own. But that's how they responded. That's how they dealt with the squad automatic weapon. Something a little more capable than a rifleman or than a normal rifle that has the same range and accuracy, but can lay more suppressive fire, can take a little more abuse from sustained automatic fire.
AKS-74.
Here we go. It's weird we're doing them in like the opposite order because this is basically a mini RPK-74.
They modified this to be the RPK.
Yes and no. It's kind of like just a big, heavier version of it.
Okay.
The RPK is a bigger, heavier version of your battle rifle, designed to withstand more sustained automatic fire. I do not have an AK-74 on me, but I have a type of AK-47. I mean, the purists are going to get all upset. An AKM, this is actually a Warsaw 10. But if you notice how curved this magazine is, one of the main ways you can tell the difference is with the magazine. There's the trunnion, there's a couple other things. Right away, a dead giveaway. AK-74 mags are more straight because the round is a lot more narrow. It's very similar to our 5.56 rounds. So just like a standard, you see the difference in curvature here? Right. These are great. They're super soft shooters. This ammunition is a lot more economical too. You can put all the fancy stuff that you put on an AR. Sometimes it's going to take a little more ingenuity, or if you want to change out like grips or like stocks or something like that, you're going to have to get out your file and you're going to have to get out a Dremel or something like that. It's not quite as plug and play as your normal AR-15. It's really worth it.
How do we like the handling, the sound, the look of how when the gun fires?
All of this is POV view, which is unfortunate. I like to get it looks real. It looks good to me.
Medium range sniper rifle, C14 Timberwolf.
Yeah, this is 338 Lapua. Very accurate round. And, look at all the details. You can see all like the mills for adjustments. There's kind of a couple different ways you can do it. You adjust all that stuff to 0, and then you use your reticle to adjust for how far you're shooting, how fast the wind is moving, is your target moving and all that. But then another way to do it, and again, I'm not a sniper. I was, a room clearing guy. A lot of guys will have their dope written down. They call it their dope. They'll have like numbers that are written on their sock, or they'll have a card, or they make stuff on their sleeve. There's a bunch of different ways, but they keep track of all this data. And they'll generally have a notebook.
Data on previous engagement.
And they'll sit down, and for cold barrel versus fired barrel, it's crazy the amount of math and everything that gets into it. And for like a young 20-something super ADD, like testosterone up dude that just wants to kick down doors, the kicking down the doors seem more interesting to me than as much as doing a crawl, through enemy territory sounds fun to me. But, so what they'll do is they'll adjust all those dials and everything to zoom it in or to zone it in for that specific shot. That's cool. Look at that barrel.
The barrel looks like it's got a rifle, like an engraving on it or a rifle on the outside.
It's kind of like fluted barrel. They can call it a fluted barrel. I don't know if that's the technical term when it's a spiral like that. But it increases surface area and more specifically decreases weight. There's so many, and harmonics. Harmonics is like the latest thing that they're testing. It's the way the barrel vibrates as the round is coming through it. It affects accuracy and everything. It's awesome to shoot extreme long range, but for hunting and for combat, it gets a little interesting because that bullet is up in the air for a while. And so especially for hunting, it's not very ethical to do like a mild shot at a deer. So you'd be shooting way far out there. Now there's some like mountain goats and stuff that like you can't get closer.
Right.
Where the amount of time that bullet's in the air, if that thing turns its head or just like gets stung by a bee and shifts and then you shoot its jaw off and then it starves to death later. Like no hunter wants to do that. They want the cleanest, most ethical death possible to harvest that meat and respect that animal. Same thing in combat too. Like you're shooting over a mile shot. If you got to take that shot, take that shot. So a lot of guys will run these too with like either an offset red dot. A lot of DMR rifles will run the red dot right on top. I'm a big fan of the offset red dot, and I understand some people. So if you look at my work gun here, And, you know, nothing on here is like the best of the best, but it's all good, reliable stuff. And I'm, you know, improving it with my budget and time. But I have an offset red dot, and then I have a variable powered optic right here. I use this for out to 100, 150 meters or for clearing rooms and stuff. But in a real tight room, you don't even really need to aim if you're good at reflexive shooting. But another advantage of this is, like, say you're engaging targets in like a street battle, and then somebody up on a rooftop starts shooting at you. But what you do is you put that offset red dot on them, and then you switch that over. This is only a 1:4. I'm going to be putting a 1:10 on here soon. But like when you start to really zoom in, if you're already zoomed in all the way, your field of view is a lot smaller. So it's hard to like find that little figure on that rooftop. So as long as these are both zero, if you put the red dot on that offset, on that target further away, and then you flip it over, you're going to be able to find it with your high-powered optic much quicker and more efficiently, right? Yeah, it's kind of... Some guys run them right on top, and that's cool too. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I can do it, and that's fine. I like this. I'm used to canting my rifle anyways so much. That's an option that a lot of guys put on these DMR or sniper rifles. There are a couple different magazine variations for AR-10s. It's not the same thing as almost all AR-15s that shoot the same round, take the same magazine. There are a couple different versions of AR-10 magazines depending upon which manufacturer you go with. That is something to note. But, you know, another thing that they make sure they do, you know, when we first came out with our M4s, they weren't free floating barrels, meaning that those handguards were attached to the barrel. So if you were leaning on it, you were taking a long distance shot, you know, it could throw off your aim, putting a little bit of pressure on that barrel. So all of these are free floating. The handguards are on the outside and they're not touching the barrel at all. That's the same thing with this thing. This is, you know, a 5.56 gun. If you want to follow me on my adventures, or if you have any questions concerning weapons or gear or anything like that, shoot me a DM at MAV11B, MAV11B on Instagram.
If you want to hang out with me a little bit more, head on over to Shift Fire, the exploration and appreciation of military culture.